Okay, this is Sean Partridge coming at you live from Infinity Trader. We're looking at Apple Computer on a 2-minute time frame. We have Apple that's had a gap down this morning below this consolidation. Apple has consolidated off of the lows and then broke out of the consolidation off of the lows. Very similar to the pattern in the market. Right now it's forming an inside bar after the breakout bar. This is forming a breakout failure pattern, one of the patterns that we cover in our free seminar on our homepage. And if Apple Computer can get down into about 86.30, I'm going to look for a short position there with a stop loss just above the high of the inside bar. I'm looking for the markets to do the same thing. I want to see the markets get down and take out the low of that inside bar. All right, I'm going to take a position here with a stop loss at 86.61. So I am short at 86.36. I'm going to look for Apple to move to a new low on the day. So what it is that's going to get the market selling off is the traders that just created this big, huge green bar. This was obviously created by buyers. Those buyers have an expectation that prices will advance higher. Those expectations are not being fulfilled when prices have come back through the point where all those traders were buying from. So now there's traders experiencing losses, which is going to put downward pressure on Apple. And since it's already had a bearish gap down, it's in a downtrend along with the markets, it's likely that we see Apple continue lower to make a new low on the day. All right, Apple's moving down nicely here now. I want to see the markets get down and take out the lows of those last couple of inside bars. The pattern on the market is very similar to the pattern in Apple. Just want to see the selling pressure start to pick up in the markets, and that's going to draw some increased selling on Apple and likely bring it to a new low of the day. You can see both the markets, the NASDAQ and the ES, are right at a midpoint line, one of the pivot lines, which is going to act as support. So we really want to see the markets get through these lines here. Want to see some selling pressure come in and drive us nicely through those lines, and that's when we should really see some increased selling pressure coming in on the futures, which will drive Apple down. So that's what my focus is watching the markets, and I want to see them break through this area that they're at now, get through that line. Here, Apple is acting very nicely where Apple continues to sell off while the markets are just stable, so that's showing us nice relative weakness. But Apple is approaching some support here from these prior lows, this area here that we want to get through. So hopefully this is now where the selling pressure will increase on the futures and help Apple get through this area of support. Otherwise, we can see Apple retrace a little bit, maybe consolidate here for a bar or two until we get some selling coming in on the futures. Okay, now we've got some selling picking up on the futures. You can see getting us through that line, the midpoint line there. So now that we've cleared that line, there should be some increase in momentum on the futures to drive them down toward the low of the day. And let's get Apple breaking down to a new low of the day. All right, here's Apple to a new low of the day. Momentum still isn't really increasing the way I'd like to see it on the futures. They are moving a little bit slower than what I expected, but they are moving down, which is putting downward pressure on Apple. So that's good. And where the momentum has increased on Apple prior to the momentum increasing on the futures is a good sign, because once the momentum increases on the futures, it will put increased downward pressure on Apple. And now we have the ES market approaching its S3 pivot line, so that's going to be a little bit of support. The trends are strong to the downside, so hopefully we can just blow right through this line. It is just a line, but there are traders at these pivot lines. And you can see some buyers coming in on the futures right off of that S3 line. It doesn't mean those buyers are going to reverse this trend or anything. It's just an area where we can expect some traders to be short covering and some traders to be going long. And so we can see a little retracement or stabilization in the futures. But ultimately, this trend suggests that we will decline below this area, which is going to continue to put downward pressure on Apple. And that's why I'm willing to let it retrace against me a little bit here if it's going to, and then I'll look for it to turn and continue lower. All right, now you can see some sellers coming in on the ES, driving it through that S1 line. Let's get the NASDAQ pushing through the low of the day. Want to see momentum really increase whenever we're at these pivot lines. You don't want to see prices start to sell off and then come back up. because it can't just set up some type of retracement or reversal. So whenever prices start to sell off at one of these pivot lines, you want to see momentum really drive prices through the line decisively and can accelerate to the downside. Then once you're away from the line, if there is a consolidation or retracement, that's one that I have no problem with, because the line, once we break through it, it becomes an area of resistance. So that will put downward pressure on the markets to keep things trending lower. Okay, here we have the NASDAQ futures taking out the low of the day, and the ES is now taking out the low of the day, getting prices away from that S3 pivot line. So let's see Apple Computer here take out the low of the day, and let's get some real momentum coming into the downside here. A little bit of caution here where the markets just took out the low of the day and now prices are stable right at these pivot lines. A little bit of consolidation is okay, but I do not want to see prices retrace back up too far. Otherwise, it's going to set up for a little retracement in the market, and the market may retrace back up somewhere into this area. Ultimately, the trend is down, so even a retracement should be met with sellers, which would turn the trend around and drive it lower. But here we go. We want to see momentum really increase and accelerate prices away from the area that the markets are at right now. And Apple is holding on strong while the markets are pushing to a new low. So a little bit of relative strength there in Apple. We do have Apple retracing a bit. Apple is showing some relative strength against the futures. The trend is really strong to the downside, so I'm going to sit through this retracement against my position and look for prices to ultimately make it a lower low, or at least come back down to retest the low. So I'm going to sit through this retracement and just watch what happens. Okay, so now we have a nice turning point here in Apple. We get a little topping tail bar, so I'm going to go ahead and move my stop loss to just above the high of that topping tail at 86.18. And now look for Apple to come back down into this area. I don't think it's going to go to a new low too quickly, but we may watch it move down and consolidate a little bit, and then ultimately I'm looking for it to make a new low. Alright, now my focus is getting Apple below this prior green bar here. This green bar means that that bar was created by buyers. So right now, where prices are taking out the low, every trader who committed to this prior green bar is holding, with a long position, is holding a losing position. So now those traders are going to come in closing their position now that they're holding a losing trade, and that's going to increase selling pressure to the downside, and this is happening at the same time that the markets are making a new low. So this is where I want to see momentum really increase on Apple, and let's get down and take out the low of the day and have some type of a decent move here. The markets are trending very slowly. We're not getting any type of real momentum moves. This type of really slow 30-degree angle type of a trend is very bearish. It increases the odds that we're going to see the markets continue to trade lower until we start to get some real momentum to the downside. The odds are this trend is going to continue lower. So here we have the NASDAQ futures coming into its S2 pivot point line here, just below. So that's going to create a little bit of support on the NASDAQ. And the ES market is approaching a midpoint line, so it's going to create a little support there again. It's just a real slow trend down. Okay, traders, I lost my power halfway through that trade, had to call my broker to have them exit my position for me. I was able to exit at 85.69 at 10:38. I was not able to continue managing those pivot points as I planned to do for this position to capture more of a gain, but I would have been taken out at about 10:56 at approximately 85.75 or so, somewhere in that area is where I would have ultimately been taken out of that trade. If you'd like to learn more about the method that we're following, you can go to our homepage at infinitytrader.com and click on the Watch Free Video link. We let you watch the first hour of our iTrade for Wealth seminar, which covers the entire method that I am following. It's a free video. You don't have to register, give any credit card information. So go ahead, watch it, and enjoy. So this is Sean Partridge coming at you live from Infinity Trader. We're looking at Apple Computer on a 2-minute time frame, and today is Wednesday, January 14th.